I'm here today with Ryan Smith, and Ryan is state representative. So tell us a little bit about what you do as state representative.
Well, as state representative, I am kind of the link between our district in southeastern Ohio and Columbus. So anything that people have issues with on the state level, I'm kind of the go-between to represent the constituents and local government and so on and so forth, to work with all the Columbus administration and different things like that to try to help smooth things out and make things happen.
So tell us about what area that you serve.
I have 4 counties. I have all of Gallia and all of Jackson. I have half of Vinton County, the western half of Vinton, and I have almost all of Lawrence except for the Ironton and Hanging Rock, Hamilton Township area.
So as state representative, you probably serve on a variety of different committees. So tell us a little bit about those.
I am chairman of finance, which has been a tall task because as the budget comes out every 2 years, that's the bill that I carry as the chairman of finance in the House of Representatives. So it's a $71 billion bill that covers the state financing for the next 2 years. We do that statutorily. It has to be done by June 30th of this year. So we just finished that up recently. I also sit on the Education Committee, and then I sit on the Government Accountability and Oversight Committee.
So tell us a little bit about some things in the finance bill that we can look forward to in the next 2 years.
Well, one of the things I think I worked hard on the finance side with the budget was school funding. And school funding is always a topic that people talk about, but really trying to get more money to the rural areas and to our schools. Our schools are smaller than most in the state, being rural schools, and for the most part, I think everybody did fairly well. We had a few districts that didn't get an increase, but I came out pretty pleased with the way everything ended.
What do you see as the most important issue kind of facing the area over the next couple of years?
Well, I think for the last 4 years, I've probably worked on the opiate epidemic for a lot of the time I was there, because we've seen such a scourge of prescription drugs that led to meth, that led to heroin, and everything we've done there. That's led to jail overcrowding, which obviously we're facing here in Lawrence County and so many of the other counties. It's not unique to this county by any means. So that's an area we've worked on. I think education funding is so paramount to make sure that our students and our kids have a bright future and get all the opportunities that the children in other school districts get as well.
Yeah, so that, maybe access to education also ties into that opiate epidemic like you were talking about before.
It does. The more access we get, the more opportunities they have as far as advanced placement classes or classes that they normally wouldn't get offered. To give you, for instance, in rural counties, we offer anywhere from 130 to 150 classes from 9 through 12th grade. In the suburban areas, there are often 240, 250 classes, and in urban areas where you have 50,000 kids, you end up with over 400 classes.
Oh, wow.
So there's a huge disparity on what's offered, and that comes back to the workforce development. So we need to have well-rounded students coming through that are prepared to enter the workforce and attract companies here so we can get more jobs.
Yeah. So I know that in terms of workforce development, there's been a recent development here locally.
In the budget, we had a line item for the industrial park, South Point Industrial Park, to start a higher education collaborative with schools such as Shawnee State, OU, Rio Grande, all the higher education schools in the area will collaborate. And I think part of what they're wanting to do is the STEM with the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which again is a more specialized area that our students don't necessarily get exposed to. So it's more opportunity, it's more workforce development. The idea is to tie the education into what we actually need in our employers here so that we're fulfilling that need and making sure that we're linking the two together.
Yeah, and that will help draw additional companies to the area as well.
It will. A trained workforce and available workforce is extremely important. And going back to the opiate issue, that was another thing that we find is finding people who can pass the drug test. That's a big issue in southeastern Ohio as well. So you wouldn't think that would be a problem with 9% unemployment in a lot of the area, but it still is.
So tell us a little bit about other things that your office works on and helps constituents with?
We work on a variety of things. If there's an issue with electric companies or anything like that, oftentimes people need electric or water. We've worked on situations like that to try to work with the local municipalities to find grant dollars to help expand services. Any number of things from that standpoint. I get a lot of calls actually for situations in the court system, oftentimes custody cases and things like that. But my role really, when it comes to the courts, we're hands off, and we can check on where it's at, but we can't obviously influence any of that. It has to run through its normal course. So, for a lot of things, it's just a matter of making sure everything's working correctly from the state side, and that if people need assistance from particularly a state agency, that I'm able to help get it to that point.
Yeah, so you're kind of almost a delegator at times when it comes to different state agencies and just helping people figure out where they need to get their assistance.
Exactly. So they might not know who to call at the PUCO, for instance, but I have a relationship with the government affairs person at the PUCO, so it allows me to pick up the phone and call them and say, here's the situation I have, can you help me with it? And we get more of a one-on-one contact rather than getting lost in a maze of people that they don't know from Adam. So that's really, we're trying to cut through some red tape and hopefully get people where they want to get to.
Yeah, and it can be difficult. I mean, when you're dealing with a large organization, if you just pick up the phone and call, it seems like it's very difficult to get where you need to be. So
it is. It's easy to get lost sometimes and talk to somebody different every time you call. It's quite frustrating.
Yeah. So I've noticed that there's been a lot of talk about marijuana legalization. So tell us a little bit about what's going on with that and how that's going to come up on the ballot.
So the marijuana legalization will be Responsible Ohio's leading what they call Issue 3. So that's Issue 3 on the ballot that basically allows for 10 name sites to be named in the Constitution with the investors owning these sites. So all the wholesale growth of marijuana would be in these 10 sites. So what bothered me mostly about it is it's creating cementing a monopoly into the Ohio Constitution, into our founding document, in order to benefit just these 10 sites with this small number of investors. So we have that issue as far as the monopoly goes. So at the end of our session period in June, I sponsored House Joint Resolution 4, which ends up being Issue 2, which would make it much harder for us to create a financial monopoly in the Ohio Constitution. So what we're trying to do is educate people as to some of the ramifications that are coming here. There's 4 states currently that have marijuana legalization for both medical and recreational use. Oregon, Washington, Colorado, and Alaska, and the District of Columbia not being a state. But so that's out there now. Obviously, Ohio really doesn't have a lot in common with those states. We're learning a lot from what they've done. One of the more interesting things, and they sell it as, well, this create more local taxes for your municipalities and so on and so forth. The challenge is it's still federally illegal. It's a Schedule I controlled substance. Therefore, the banks who are federally regulated and credit unions can't take deposits for it. They can't give loans to these businesses. So it makes it much harder for them to start up and get going. The other thing that worries me, as much as the monopoly side, is the fact that when you look at Colorado, a lot of the market's edibles. So most people, when they think of marijuana, they think of smoking it. The edibles are in the forms of brownies, cookies, gummy bears, things like that. Well, we've seen pediatric ICU rates go through the roof in Colorado because kids are getting their hands on it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pretty scary scenario. And considering all the issues we fought with addiction and so on and so forth in this area, I just think it's really troubling for Ohio to be faced with this right now. I have to believe there's a better avenue than legalizing for everybody to use.
Yeah. So that's interesting, and that will be, we'll continue to see information come out about that. There was an article just in the newspaper today, so I'm sure over the next few months that will continue to.
As the November election comes, you will hear a lot more about it. There will be a lot of advertising, and that's what this group is planning to do, is basically spend $20 million advertising, telling you why you should do this. And, you know, our group working on issue 2 and opposing issue 3, we won't have near that kind of money.
Yeah.
But we'll have a grassroots effort and talk to people and try to educate them on exactly what this proposal does.
So the group here in Ohio, is that part of a larger national organization, or is that, you know?
There are people that are part of a national organization. I think they have support from some of those. What's interesting is, it's kind of fascinating, is there's a lot of marijuana legalization groups out here that want to see it legalized that don't believe in issue 3 because of the way they wrote it to be a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
So they feel like it should be legalized, just not in this way. So, you know, from my standpoint, it's not really a discussion as much about legalization as is, are you okay with allowing a monopoly under the Constitution? Similar to what we did with the casinos a few years back when the voters approved that. But this is kind of a whole different scale.
Yeah, so that would be actually in the Constitution of the state.
Correct. And everything is set that way. So the tax rates are set, everything are set. According to the tax rates that they have set, they would be less than alcohol and tobacco, which is what we said as a legislature. So all the legislative duties that would normally come with this, regulation and everything like that, are all set in the Constitution. So the only way you can change it is to go back to the voters and have them amend the Constitution. So it becomes very protected from that standpoint.
Wow. See, I mean, I was completely unaware of this. I thought the issue was just mainly legalizing or not legalizing it.
Right.
So that's been interesting to hear about that.
There's a lot more to talk about, and as you said, in the coming months you'll hear a lot more about it. It's an interesting issue, and a lot of states are facing it right now. It's just a matter of deciding how they want to tackle it, and if Ohio wants to go that route. I personally think we will, but we'll see.
Yeah. So what else is kind of on the forefront going on in Columbus?
You know, we work on a variety of issues. We're currently working on some charter school issues, which don't affect this area as much, but it does from a standpoint of funding public schools, trying to get our arms around that and clean it up a little bit. I think that's important for the area. One of the things that I think is extremely important to this area that I continue to push is high-speed internet access and cell phone coverage. There's too many areas around here. Obviously, we drop calls as we drive around. So that's been something I've talked to the Telecom Association since I've been in Columbus to improve cell phone coverage, talk to all the providers to try to get internet service. And obviously technology is changing, so it becomes cheaper. You can do it through the airwaves. There's a lot of different avenues we can try to do it. But I think until we cross that divide, we're always going to be held back from an economic development standpoint. We're going to be held back from an education standpoint. Just here in Lawrence County, if you go to OU Proctorville or OU Southern, either one, in the evenings you can see people coming in and parking outside to get on the wireless internet.
Yeah.
The libraries are packed with people to get on their internet system. And so you can see the demands there. It's harder to do with our topography down here being rolling hills, and we're less populated, obviously, particularly in the northern end of Lawrence County. So it's challenging, but that's something I'm going to continue to work on.
Yeah, I mean, even if you have satellite radio in your car when you drive, I mean, right here down County Road 1, which, you know, you would think would be, not that far out, you hit dead spots. And, you know, like you said, a lot of that is the topography of the area that makes it a bigger challenge. And
it is. There's just a lot of challenges to it. Is it profitable for companies to run wires up to 5 houses in a hollow? Probably not. So we've got to figure out a way to make it profitable for them. Or Federal Communications Commission is always coming out with grant dollars to try to solve this problem as well.
if we could figure out a way to flatten out the county, we'd be good, right?
I don't know if we want to do that. I particularly like the hills, so I'm sure there's times that we would like a flat county, but
Yeah. But it's a lot prettier with the hills, so
It is.
we'll go with that.
it is.
There's been a lot of talk about senior issues. Is there anything going on with that in Columbus you'd like to share?
You know, we're always talking about senior issues, and obviously that segment of the population is so important to us, and we've tried to increase some of the funding, in particular to some of the in-home care, some of the nursing homes, things like that, to make sure that we have qualified people taking care of our seniors, and hopefully staying in the home where they want to be. And getting in-home care. But, you know, it's all throughout the district and really throughout the region, I see senior centers that I visit. And, you know, you think on those lines of how important those are from a nutritional aspect and a lot of times. But what I see is the social aspect.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
they enjoy getting together. It's important to that. And all the areas struggle with the funding there. So whether it's local levies or some assistance from the state side or federal side, I would hope that we can find a pathway there to keep those funded to a level to where they can continue to provide the services they provide.
Yeah, and you know, in this area we have the senior center down in Chesapeake, and we have just some super dedicated people who do a fantastic job with that. You know, and have been dedicated to make it successful.
It's every area. It's amazing to me. You have these people that just give and give and give to make these things work, and it's truly it's fun to see, and it's great for the community. So I would hope that everybody would support it.
Yeah, and of course, you know, like a lot of the people who are helping with these things, they aren't senior citizens. They don't, you know, directly benefit from the service. So I always think that's cool to see that kind of dedication with people for other populations.
It's just a matter of, you know, serving the people who, from my aspect, you know, we take care of our seniors, they took care of us, and it's an obligation we have, just the same as it is for the younger generation, to hopefully offer them all the opportunities we can. So two really important segments of the population.
In terms of economic development or and roads, is there anything going on in this area that you could share with us?
Well, I mean, clearly the Portsmouth bypass is a big investment I think the state's making. That's a new situation with the public-private partnership that they're trying. Maybe something that we look at for the Chesapeake bypass, and that I know has been talked about for decades. So hopefully, you know, we'll be able to find something along those lines to be able to fund that and move it along. As far as economic development goes, you know, I think we're going to continue to work, and I'm going to try to do my best to try to find some funding sources for the local economic development situations, like Bill Dingus's group at the South Point Industrial Park, in order to help fund some of the operations there, and that needs to come through Jobs Ohio, through our APEG region. I think APEG in southeastern Ohio, we have. Lawrence County's more advanced than the other counties in my district, probably, but oftentimes we have a one-person shop that's in the courthouse. It's just not.
So what's APEG?
APEG is the Jobs Ohio arm of our economic development in Appalachia. So that is we have different regions, like Columbus 2020 is their area. So everything runs through Columbus 2020 and Columbus up to Jobs Ohio to get approval. Same thing with APEG. Now, APEG is a little different because it has 25 counties, so it's a huge area that they're covering. And again, southeastern Ohio is less developed, have more challenges probably from an economic development standpoint, although we probably are seeing good opportunity in a lot of ways right now. I think we're seeing some really unique situations where companies are reaching out and trying to find locations that work for them.
So you mentioned that the Portsmouth bypass is doing a public-private partnership. How does that work?
It's really a unique financing option. So you have bonds being sold based on a construction manager agreeing to do the contract over a number of years. So you're combining public funding and private construction in a more unique way than we've ever done it before. It's very complex in the actual funding side of it, but it's something that allows us, because our resources are limited on the transportation side, It allows us to tap into some other money and some private dollars that would go into this. So if somebody's willing to buy a bond for the Portsmouth bypass, instead of coming out of gas tax dollars in the state of Ohio, then maybe we have a bigger pot of money to work with. So when you're talking about $300 million, $400 million, $500 million jobs, it allows us to advance those a little bit faster rather than say, well, they're 10 years out or 15 years out and things like that.
So is that something that is being done elsewhere in Ohio, or is that?
That's actually, I think, the first one in Ohio that we have done. So it's kind of the first unique thing. Now we did some things with the Turnpike where we leased those assets to get some money to help fund the transportation system in the state of Ohio. But the public-private partnership, this is the first.
Now, was that a model taken maybe from another state, or?
I believe so. I wasn't intimately involved in the project, but I think it was something that they're kind of thinking outside the box. The challenge we have, and the federal government is realizing this now too, gas tax only goes so far when you have more fuel-efficient cars. Now we have electric cars. We have all these different modes of transportation. So we're seeing that pot of money kind of shrink a little bit. Yet we still have a lot of highway to take care of. We've got to move goods and services around, and nobody really wants to increase the gas tax and increase cost on anybody. So we're trying to find some unique ways to hopefully fund that, and waiting kind of on Washington to see what they're going to do as well.
So if a constituent has a question, has an issue, how can they reach out to your office?
A couple different ways. My office number is 614-466-1366 in Columbus. My email would be rep93@ohiohouse.gov. They can go on the Ohio House website and find me that way. So I have two legislative aides that work in my office that will answer the phone and work closely with me, one of which is from Jackson County, so he knows the area. And we're happy to help answer questions. And I always tell people, I don't know if I can get you the answer you want, but I'll get back to you.
You'll get them something.
That's right. I'll get back to you with something, and hopefully we can solve your problem.
All right. Well, thanks so much for talking with us today.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed it.